Before we start today's show, we want to talk a little bit about something that happened last month in the gaming community. So Zak Smith, also known as Zak S or Zak Sabbath, who's a creator whose works we have talked about on this show, had some recent disclosures made against him by a former partner, Mandy Morbid, and Vivid Vivka, who was a cast member on Sirens of the Realms with Satine Phoenix, as well as women whose last names I don't know, but Jennifer, and Hannah. Anyway, disclosures of abuse by him. And then there were other discussions and revelations that I didn't know about of just general harassment and really aggressively bad behavior across the community. And while I can't personally attest to the validity of a lot of these things, it is our policy, and I think Galen agrees with me on this, that we believe survivors and we believe women and all survivors of abuse and harassment, and we have zero tolerance for that sort of behavior in the gaming communities. What that means to us is that we won't be promoting any of his games anymore. So we have the books, we're not going to burn those books, but we won't be talking about them by name here in this space. And we have removed the links to those works from some of the notes from previous episodes. And that just really gives us an opportunity to seek out other artists producing really cool and interesting work who aren't abusers and harassers. Without further ado, let's move on to the fun stuff.
Greetings, friends, and welcome to the Gaming, Adventure, and Discovery Explorers,
a show about our adventures and discoveries as we explore the world of gaming.
On today's show,
Galen and I are going to talk about some gaming-related updates that we have. We're going to survey the various games found in all the different Star Trek series and episodes and movies. We're going to continue on with our world-building discussion, and then I'm going to give a debrief from this month's session of Mohrnheim Halcyon, my 5th edition D&D campaign.
Let's
explore.
So, Chad, how are you?
I am great.
Let's see what have you been up to since last we met? What's been going on in your pop culture and gaming life?
So much, but actually, just in the last day, I had a little bit of an injected couple experiences. So, so we're recording this on March 9th, and Marvel's Captain Marvel,
yes,
just came out yesterday, and so we saw it on opening night. It was a group of friends, and we went, and the only tickets that were available were it's called 4D.
What?
Yeah, and we didn't know what it was, right? So, and this was somebody else's plan, and we just kind of joined in. We're like, yeah, hey, we love Captain Marvel. This looks fun. Mm-hmm. Who's going to save us from Thanos destroying half the universe?
Yeah,
which happened in Infinity War. And so first, just real quick about the movie. I won't spoil anything, but it was a fun, very solid entry into the Marvel Universe movie canon. The casting was excellent, and I can't remember the actress's name who plays Captain Marvel because I'm bad at that. But anyway, she was great. It was solid. Yeah, I think it wasn't the best kind of written and put together movie, but it was also solid for sure. And if you love your superhero movies, you will love this movie.
Yes.
Now, the downside, so this 4D business.
Yeah. Let's talk about version, this wizardry.
It was terrible. And so we sat down, and I could see why it seems like a good idea. So what happens is it's like a ride. It's like a simulator. And so the seats move. Oh. And it sprays water at you.
What?
And it sprays air at you, and it punches you in the back. I'm not exaggerating.
That's what bullies do. That's horrible.
Yeah, exactly. And so it was like, at first it seemed awesome. I was like, oh, this is going to be great. It's going to be immersive and whatever. Thinking about a year and a half ago, we went to Universal Studios and went on some of the Harry Potter rides. Mm-hmm. And some of those are really immersive, and it had a little of that feel.
Yeah. But
it was just very distracting. Because you're being physically assaulted while you're watching the characters fight.
Right.
And it got to a point where literally I was thinking, oh, an action scene's going to come. What new hell am I going to have to experience in order to watch this movie? And it was not a short movie, and it was an action movie. Yeah. So it was like 2 hours of this intermittent just stuff. And even I think if it had been a little lighter touch, it might have been cool.
Okay, yeah.
But it was distracting, and really it just wasn't fun. And it was twice as expensive. So it was like,
oh, good.
Do not recommend. I won't be going to any more 4D, and I was not the only one. I think it went. The people in my group were anywhere from it was kind of distracting, but I got over that to that was terrible.
Yeah,
I would not do that again.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I recommend
avoiding 4D.
4D is a bad idea, and I just think it's as movies go, that's not what movies are designed for.
Yeah, totally.
I think.
Yeah,
so,
I agree. Well, thank you for taking one for the team on that one, Chad. So I don't have to go to it.
You're welcome. You're welcome. And then yesterday, just my other update. I several months ago, I just came to this realization that I hadn't played Magic the Gathering for years, and I had all these cards that I bought, and so I sold them. I sold a bunch of them from one of our gaming stores here. It's Meeples in West Seattle, which is a great, if you live in Seattle, it's definitely one of the, if not the best gaming stores. Mm-hmm. And they bought a bunch of my cards, and I had some credit there, and then I took the rest of them to Card Kingdom. They buy more of the cards.
Yeah,
so
I know they're really deep into the Magic the Gathering scene.
Yeah, and they have a more robust buying and selling and credit program. Mm-hmm. And so I sold half of them there, and so I had. And then I bought some books, and so I cleared out the credit from Card Kingdom, and I had a few dollars left at Meeples. And I had literally like $2 on my gift card from Meeples. Because I bought another book with most of my what they'd given me for my cards. But anyway, so I wanted to spend it. To spend the $2 of credit, I bought a $50 book and rationalized it. And I finally bought Volo's Guide, the D&D 5th edition game book from like 2 years. I think it's 2 years old.
I think so,
now.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I've been meaning to forever because it's got those playable races, and it's the other monster book that Wizards has put out. And so anyway, so I'm finally caught up there. It's been on my list forever, and I'm excited to finally have it. So
yeah, and that'll be a fun discussion for later too, because I've had the electronic version from Wizards on the D&D Beyond. I've had that for a while. So after you dig into it, I would love to talk to you about it.
I bet there's other monster races that you... knowing you like your monsters and that you're a bit of an alcoholic.
That's right.
if Men 13 doesn't
exactly,
make it, we'll have a flying cat or something. I don't know.
There's a little rabbit with a horn. Maybe we'll talk about that.
The jackalope? The jackalope is a playable race. I'll have to see. Is that in there?
Pretty much, yeah.
I don't think it is, but maybe. No. Anyway, so those are my kind of high points for the last few days. What have you been up to?
So I played a game that was pointed out to me by my wife. I'm a big baseball fan. I love baseball. I love to try different baseball board games. And she pointed one out that was apparently kickstarted a year ago, and it's called Dead Ball, Baseball with Dice. And it's put out by a guy named W.M. Akers. He has a website, WMAkers.net, and you can find its stuff there. The basic rules are free to download and play on the site, and it's really simple. It uses basic polyhedral dice, so using a D100, a D20, D12, D8, and a D4.
So your normal D&D dice if you're using percentile.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
Okay.
And it combines that with the basic rules, just like the stats that you'd find on the back of a baseball card. And so you can take a player that you like and then look at his baseball card and put him in your lineup. And then you can play a game with your friends. And it's
so actual baseball cards.
Actual baseball cards, yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. So you can take the actual stats. Yeah, it's pretty great. And my wife and I sat down and we played the first game. It took us about an hour to play a game. Yeah, and that's without knowing the rules.
Uh-huh.
So I think we get that down to about maybe half an hour.
Okay.
And so we did that.
And that's 9 innings? 9 innings of...
Yeah.
That's the rhythm of it. Okay, cool.
And there's rules that you can buy as well. And we liked that initial game so much that we went ahead and bought the PDF of the full rules. And we sat down and tried the some more advanced stuff that increased our game time to like an hour and a half. Lots more tables and things. But the way the game is set up, and the guy says it in his rules and descriptions and everything, is that take what you like, leave what you don't, and just have fun with the game. It was just super fun. And it's like I said, baseball is near and dear to my heart. So finding a way to have that on the tabletop was really great find.
Awesome. But you need actual baseball cards. I guess you wouldn't, right?
You wouldn't. Yeah, you can just go to on the internet to any of the various stat sites out there and pull the stats for players you like. And it's like maybe 4 different numbers that you need from them, and then you're done. You're ready to go.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So what did you use? Do you have baseball cards?
I used, there's a site that I go to all the time called fangraphs.com. So I go there and I created teams for Kim and I from famous players from the late 90s to the early 2000s. And I pulled their best seasons. And we kind of made all-star teams. So we had Ken Griffey Jr. and Pudge
I was going to say, that was
and
the big batting era, wasn't it?
Yeah,
the steroid, before they invented steroids and everybody was hitting home runs.
Yeah, right.
The Mark McGwire, Sammy Sosa, that kind of stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, but it was a lot of fun. And it was just one of those things where Kim found the rules and we played it that night. And it was just I just discovered a new game that I like to play.
Nice.
And so now it's in my stable.
Is Kim a baseball fan otherwise?
She is, yes.
Okay, nice. Okay,
yeah,
cool.
She's not as totally nerdy as I am about stats and stuff, but she loves the game. So
nice.
So yeah, that was a kind of a fun thing to discover the last week or so.
That just reminds me, like everyone, I go through cycles of kind of purging and giving away all this kind of stuff I'm not interested in or whatever. And the only time in my life that I have regretted giving something away was when I had moved to Seattle, and it was I had a binder with baseball and football cards.
Oh yeah.
And I was just starting college, and I think even in a anti-sports kind of phase of my life.
Okay. Yeah.
Because I was too good for that, I guess, or too serious or whatever. I don't know. I don't think we talk about it much in this space, but I have season tickets to the Seahawks now.
Yeah.
Right? And so I listen to sports radio literally every day now. But at that time I was like, sports are awful. So these were cards from the 80s. I had I can't even, I had a bunch of Seahawks cards because I've always, and some baseball cards that I only barely appreciated at the time.
Yeah.
And some lucky people got them from Goodwill, I think.
Yep.
So,
yep.
It's the only regret I have for things I've given away.
Yeah.
Anyway, thanks for bringing up that old. So cool.
Yeah.
Oh, that sounds fun. We should try that sometime.
I'd love to.
Yeah. And is a little of that is the Mariners are in a rebuilding year. You need something to fill the baseball void.
Yeah. And I could see this game be a lot of fun to sit down and have a game on the radio during the baseball season. Have a beverage of your choice and play a baseball game. It'd be fun. Yeah.
Awesome. Cool. So with that, I think we can go on to our first official topic.
Yeah, let's do.
So talk to us, Galen.
Yeah.
You know everything there is to know now about.
I do. I am the
games in fiction.
I am the authority now in the world on Star Trek games. No, I'm not the authority. No, not at all. But keeping in with the series, last time I tackled some of the games in Star Wars. And I thought I'd move on to Star Trek, keeping with the Star theme, and talk about some of the games. Now, I kept out the games that we all know, like checkers and chess and stuff like that. And I also haven't tackled the sports. I'm trying to keep it, these are games that people in the Star Trek universe sit down to play, like we sit down to play board games and stuff.
Gotcha.
And
ironically, out of scope of this is Benjamin Sisko's baseball fascination.
Yes. Yeah,
okay.
That's right. Maybe a different episode.
Yeah, actually, that could be fun.
So the first one I'm going to talk about is a game called Domjot. Domjot was a game played with a ball and a cue on a table that was set up with an irregular geometric coordination. So it was the table was shaped kind of like an L. And in the middle of the table were all these geometric shapes and little round bumpers and stuff. It almost looked like bumper pool. And some of the bumpers would light up when you hit them with the ball and stuff like that. So it was a weird Star Trek version of bumper pool billiards sort of thing like that. People would wager on it like they do on pool here in the real world.
Okay.
And as far as I know, there are no Domjot tables out there. There is no Domjot rules. The rules were never clarified. So unfortunately, it's something that's not available to us on Earth. So that's the first one.
I know this is not a true thing, but that feels just like snooker.
Yeah,
Rules don't
exactly.
actually exist.
Yeah.
It only exists as a backdrop to
Exactly.
which
Played in novels or something, or old
Right.
TV shows. Yeah.
yeah.
So the next game on my list is
So
one
what,
called...
where did we see Domjot? It's not to put you on the spot, but where? What? Which,
Domjot, in my mind, is mostly Deep Space Nine.
Okay. All right. Cool.
And I seem to remember like Jake Sisko and his friend playing that at Quarks.
Okay.
And then some other people would
Quark
wager
had
on it as well. Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay. Cool. Nice.
Another one is called Kadiskat. And Kadiskat is played on a six-sided board with 3 sets of colored tiles. There's red, green, and orange. It sort of looks like the game Reversey. You remember that one?
Vaguely. I never played it.
Same here. Same here. I know of Reversey. I've never played it myself. Kadiskat appears to be some sort of logic and strategy game for 2 to maybe 5 players have been shown playing it together.
Oh, okay.
It's another one of those, they play the game, there don't seem to be any rules to it that anyone can find. They never really laid that out. They're just having fun playing this game. There seem to be winners and losers.
Nice.
And
who played this game? Do you remember?
I don't remember. I think this was more, this wasn't a betting game. I think this is more just like a board game that they would play.
Okay. Interesting. Okay.
There is now on Board Game Geek, there's a game out there called Exago, EXAGO, which seems to be a pretty close corollary to Kadiskat. So we don't have the official Kadiskat available in our world, but there's something close.
Okay. Nice.
The next one I'm going to talk about is one called Calto. And this one is very much not available in our world, but it's kind of fun sounding. So the object of Calto, as stated by Tuvok, the officer on Voyager, was, quote, not about striving for balance, but about finding the seeds of order, even in the midst of profound chaos.
Oh,
so that's how he viewed it. I think Harry Kim.
So maybe a Vulcan game. It suggests it's a Vulcan game.
It's definitely a game of mental capacity and logic. Harry Kim, who was also on Voyager, I think he described the game as trying to make a ball out of a bunch of sticks. So okay, yeah, it's a 1 or 2 player game, so you can play by yourself.
Okay,
and I think it's just like the number of moves it takes you to do it. Would be the scoring. The game has a large number of small holographic rods called Ta'an, and they are generated from the game board surface. And what you're supposed to do is arrange them in a specific manner, which eventually produces an icosahedron. Yeah, right? Icosahedron, which is, I think, a spherical sort of shape.
Okay, all right. Lots of sides.
Yeah. And even in a 2-player game, it's the first person, it's the person that places the last Ta'an rod that completes that sphere.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
And there's a whole thing in it about how human beings like to go for symmetry. So they start in trying to build something symmetrical. And the Vulcans say, you can't. You have to embrace the chaos. Your Calto game starts looking really bad, but it ends up looking perfect. So it's a really heavy Vulcan game.
Okay.
Again, as you can probably tell by the holographic nature of it, not available on this Earth. But I did find at least one thesis paper out there where the person lays out the math and science involved in creating that game and how it would work. And the math goes way beyond me. There are lots of symbols in there that aren't even numbers or anything like that, so I don't know how that would work. But
okay, I mean, I know just enough to guess. Like it must be just 3-dimensional equations.
I would think so. I would think so.
So and then how do they interact? How do they?
See, it gets you thinking. It appeals to the Vulcan side of your mind.
It does a little bit. Yeah, a little bit.
And this is definitely one that I remember Tuvok playing. So I think this is all just Voyager related.
Okay. I can imagine that one, like, as we're talking about it, I think that sounds like hell to play.
Yeah.
But it might actually be a fun spectator sport a little bit. I guess maybe not a sport, but a spectator game to watch as somebody, watch a master at it, or somebody kind of go through the chaos and the construction of it,
Yeah.
Hopefully, I don't know, Vulcans are very patient and long-lived, so
yeah, exactly.
It might take a long time, which would take the fun out of it, but okay.
So the next one, this one, there isn't much on it at all. It's called Kotra, and it's a Cardassian board game, which is described by Elam Garrick, who was on Deep Space Nine, described it that it favored bold tactical maneuvers over defensive play.
Right.
And it's like, okay, fun. And again, like lots of the games on Star Trek, the rules are like no one knows. But there is a rule version available that I actually found, of all places, on a DeviantArt page.
Okay.
Someone put up a drawing of the game board that they'd taken from the episodes, and then came up with rules for it. So the rules are out there for Kotra.
Okay.
And this was a Cardassian game. So it was the bad guys of Deep Space Nine made this one.
Right. So, I can't help but unpack that a little bit. Like, having not read that link at all, so I don't know if this is just nowhere, but a game that favors bold tactical maneuvers over defensive play, that would tell me that the rules themselves have very little, they're not balanced towards defense, right? So I think there's probably a lot of mobility and a lot of kind of attacking, like, so your stats it'd be a little like, if you're playing World of Warcraft, it'd be like all DPS against each other.
Right.
And so what you're doing is maximizing your speed or maybe cover. I mean, because cover is a way to maneuver.
Yeah.
But holding in position would be very, like, would either drain you or would not, like, the way the numbers probably work is like, maybe there's no rules for cover.
Yeah.
Maybe there is no cover. Maybe I don't know, just kind of pondering like what that would mean, because if you put it to that extent, that tells me the game itself is biased against defensive play.
Yes.
Versus, say, chess, where both defensive and kind of an attacking strategy are valid strategies that go into favor based, I don't know, just on kind of trends at the time. But both exist really it can be equally well used if you know how to counter them.
Yeah.
So,
right. I found this really interesting when it mentioned it, because it's the fact that this comes from the Cardassians. It comes from the quote unquote bad guys, right?
Right. Yeah.
And B, it's telling us in the rules that it favoring those bold tactical movers over defensive play. So for me, it's a game in the world that's revealing some more about this species.
Yeah.
About what they value. And even in their spare time, in their fun time, they're doing tactics and maneuvers and all that sort of stuff too. Yeah. So I thought it was pretty cool. Pretty cool.
Yeah. And I'm a little rusty on my Cardassian history, but weren't they a resource poor planet? Wasn't that what drove them to all their conquests?
I believe so.
I know the Klingons had a little of that also, but interesting to see how those cultural trends would come out. Like having to take and keep and take more.
Right.
As a
always reaching out for more. Yeah, totally. Yeah. So the next one is a game called Stratagema, and Stratagema was on Next Generation.
Okay.
And this one is an electronic game between two opponents. And the equipment for the game consisted of a holographic projector that created images of 3 panels. And using the vertical panels, and using a set of controls which were placed on the end of each finger like a little thimble,
right.
The players attempted to move their game pieces to change the colors of the panels to the assigned color of their player, while the opponent tried to do the same. So, and whenever one player completely changed the color of the panels to their color, the game was won. In the series, there was a character, Sirna Kolrami, was like, he was the guy. He was the best player at this, having reached the level of 3rd level Grand Master. And his deal was, he was really arrogant, And
Yeah,
his deal was,
I remember this episode. He was a jerk.
yeah, he was a total jerk.
And I think they needed something from him. I can't remember what. But
Yeah, he was like updating their like defense systems or something like that, something like that. Yeah. He was always looking for a game, but these Earth people, there's no challenge at all. So he decided that he would challenge Lieutenant Data to a game. So playing an android, maybe that would be a challenge. But they played a game, and Kohlrami just beat Data dead, just easy. So there's a whole plot line about Data wondering, like, if he was broken, that he couldn't win this game. It's just a game. And so Data thought about it for a while, and he challenged Kohlrami to a rematch. And Data had learned that he needed to take on an unorthodox strategy. So instead of playing to win, Data played for a stalemate, blocking all of Kohlrami's moves. And he ended up frustrating Kohlrami so much that Kohlrami just quit and forfeited the match, and that's how Data won. So nice. Data took advantage of, he like gamed the system, right? He learned about his opponent, adapted his own strategy, and won the game.
I love that. I think of the games we've talked about, that's the most compelling to me.
Oh yeah,
so far, just because this idea, it derives well from a type of strategies that I've seen in games. Board games, even from chess. Sometimes if you're playing a grandmaster and you can get a stalemate in chess, which is a very normal part of chess, it's kind of uncommon, but it happens frequently. Like that's awesome.
Yeah,
and there's times in chess, if you're doing tournament play, you're accumulating points. And I haven't really done this a lot, but I had a phase where I fancied myself a little bit of a chess player long ago, and I wasn't much of a chess player, really. Anyway, so in a tournament, you would expect to play your opponent a couple times.
Yeah.
Because the first, whoever I think plays is white gets the first move, and you have an innate advantage. And there are times in chess where if you're behind a little bit, maybe you lose a bishop or lose a pawn early. Suddenly you're just trying to play for that stalemate because it's the accumulated points in the tournament that are important. So that has a lot of resonance with this game, where it's like, well, sometimes playing for a draw is a valid strategic choice, especially if you are already behind, if you're already at a disadvantage.
Yeah.
I think in chess too, if you're playing black, you've started at that disadvantage. So a lot of times they're playing just to the stalemate when they're black, and then on the white they would hope to win.
Gotcha.
Because they have the advantage.
Yeah. It reminds me too, this whole thing about taking advantage of rules of the game to win in a way that other people don't see. I just watched this documentary recently called Losers, and it's about people who famously lose at something and then learn a greater lesson, something like that.
Yes.
But they're talking about, one of the things they talk about, a guy he was a Canadian. Oh, what is that game? God, I forgot the name of the game already.
With the
curling.
I was gonna say there's only one Canadian game
curling.
Americans forget. That's curling. Yeah.
And it talks about him and how he went to like the Canadian Championships of curling one year and he lost, and he re-examined the game and he came up with a strategy that was basically the same as Data's. Instead of trying to go for points, he was trying to deny people points the entire game.
Nice.
And his team became unstoppable, and they just won over and over and over. But fans didn't like it. The game got boring, like winning 1-0. And so they actually had to change the rules of the game to stop this guy from being so dominant.
Right.
Yeah, it was just
great.
Winning in a different way is fascinating.
Yeah.
Fascinating.
Well, and we see this a lot, actually. The more we unpack this. I mean, the first Rocky movie, going the distance was Rocky's main objective.
Yes.
He was successful. Like, no one thought he would even go... Was it 12 rounds, I think, in a professional boxing fight match?
Yeah.
And so that was a success. And then, similar in I think Creed, the first Creed movie. I haven't seen the second one yet. I think it's the same thing. If you just trying to get this young up and coming athlete to go the distance against a professional. Or a established professional. Similarly in American football, which I'm a huge fan of, it's not quite the same, but that's a little bit of the Pete Carroll's offensive strategy, which is generally, I mean, each season there's some differences, but generally he likes to play really good defense and run the ball, because when you're running the ball, you shorten the game.
Yeah.
And
Right.
Because you can keep the clock rolling. You keep the ball inbounds. The clock runs. There's fewer plays. Mm-hmm. That gives your opponent less chances to score against you.
Yeah.
And so again, you want to win, so it's a little different, but it's similar in that the strategy is to kind of limit the offensive abilities of your adversary.
Yeah.
So, and people complain about that too. One of the actually could be argued was one of the best games the Seahawks played was a couple years ago where they went into overtime. I think it was against the Arizona Cardinals. I believe the game was 6-6. I think 2 field goals were all that were scored, and they went all the way through overtime, and it was a tie because both defenses were just locked down.
Yeah,
and the defenders were just. It was really a high level of play, frankly, but on this defensive side.
Yeah, right.
And meanwhile, to your point about from that documentary of losers, is the rules in the NFL have slowly and incrementally been kind of adjusted to favor offense because that's what fans tend to think they want.
Yep.
So anyway, it's just very interesting. But then that kind of leaves exploits open. One thing that let Pete Carroll do was everyone's investing in quarterbacks and wide receivers, and then Pete Carroll is able to kind of grab defensive players at a bit of a kind of a discount at lower rates and build a better team that way. So we'll see if that continues to work for him. But that was how they won their first Super Bowl. In Super Bowl 48 was building the team that way. So fun. That was a good one. What else?
The next one is a weird one. This one is just referred to as the game. It didn't have another designation inside, and this was from Star Trek Next Generation as well.
Okay.
It's a VR game where you wore this little headset with a little window on it. Apparently, the game was there's this weird funnel, and you were trying to have the funnel catch these colored discs that you threw at it.
All right.
But this game had a secret to it. It was actually developed to be secretly addictive. And it stimulated the pleasure centers of the player's brain. And it was designed by aliens called the Qatarians. And so they're trying to get the crew of the Enterprise addicted to this thing so they could sneak on board the Enterprise and steal it.
Oh.
And then Wesley was the only one who didn't want to play, and so he had to save the day and anything. This game is not available on Earth. And if it was, why would you want to play it?
At least not the version that we saw on
TV. No. And
but I think
it didn't look like fun at all.
I don't know. I feel like I have 3 versions of that on my phone right at this minute that I'm just dying to pick up and fiddle with.
Yep.
To get the points or whatever. Right.
Yep. Yep. Another one. This one is tridimensional chess. This one,
the classic.
Yeah, and this one has been played. I think it's one of the maybe the only game. If you're out there and you know better, let me know. But I think it's the only game that was played in every series.
Okay, great.
But it started out. It was the game played that Kirk and Spock like to play. McCoy would join in as well occasionally, and there are rules available for it. The rules were never really explained on the series, but a technical manual was put out by Franz Joseph, who invented the starting positions and finalized the board arrangement. And the standard rules were published in 1976. So it's been around that long. And there are official Star Trek versions that you can buy with the clear board and fancy chess pieces with Vulcans or Klingon stuff or all that. So
I had a version of this game.
Oh, really?
That I did. It was from the Franklin Mint. Franklin Mint puts out these all sorts of kind of memorabilia and stuff that's licensed from many different kinds of properties. And so there was a phase in my life where it was just what my parents got me for Christmas and birthday was a new Franklin Mint thing. And I still have some of them. So there was little kind of dioramas and stuff and whatever. But one of them was this chess set with rules and everything and a little licensed by an official thing. And so that one, I think it may not match the rules that you talked about. And I think the rules that the other rules are probably more complicated than this. But really, the rules in this version of it were really the same as it's the same as chess, but you could move your piece to any of the levels. You were kind of just looking at it from straight down, even though it was 3-dimensional. And so if you could move, if your pawn was on the middle piece and you wanted to move it, forward one, you could move it to any, I think, adjacent level or something.
Okay.
And now I can't remember there were also little smaller platforms that you could move.
Oh.
And I don't remember what the rules for that were.
Yeah.
It was one of my favorite episodes. I think it was where this game was referenced was when I think, oh God, I can't remember the name of it, but Kirk had been, I think it was either his body had been swapped or he was taken over somehow. So either other person was inhabiting his body and disguised and perpetrating to be Kirk. And Scotty, I can't remember why, because they never did this in any other episode of the original series or since.
Yeah.
But Scotty gave a password, Queen to Queen's level 3, I think was the notation.
Aha.
So like moving the Queen to the Queen's level 3 square or something. I don't know. The imposter didn't know the counter move and said something like, Mr. Scott, I don't have time for your chess problems. Beam us up. And so that was the first clue that Scotty had that something was wrong with the captain. I think it was a body
All
swap
thanks to gaming.
Yeah, right, exactly. Gaming saved the day, or at least started. It turned out to be a whole big thing. But anyway, some of my memories of that.
And I think this one for me is like the iconic Star Trek game. I remember Kirk and Spock playing this, and I remember watching it as a kid in reruns, of course, but thinking, wow, it's in space. Even the games are cooler.
Totally.
Chess on
Do you think
3
Spock
levels.
ever didn't win that game every time he played it on that ship?
I don't know. It depends on maybe if his human side got the best of him and he felt sorry for Kirk.
Yeah.
And let him win. Maybe.
I would take the.
That's a big maybe.
Yeah, right. I would like. Only maybe during his Ponfar episodes,
Right. When his mind's on other things. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, and like similarly, there was that episode with the flowers. The flowers
yes. Yep.
Zapped everybody and made them all into like hippies or something. And Spock got zapped by that. I remember. And maybe then he would give up a game. Maybe he would throw a game.
Just give him one. Just give him one.
Yeah. Right. Because I always felt like Spock would just own that.
Oh yeah.
And he would just sit there and like look at it, wouldn't he? Wouldn't he play himself sometimes? Or, I don't know.
Like logic puzzles. Yeah.
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 Have you ever done that with real chess? Did you ever play? Were you ever much of a chess player?
No, I'm bad at it. I can see one move ahead.
Yeah. I had a phase where I was a really good backyard chess player. So I could beat pretty much anybody who was at a backyard level of play. But people who studied chess openings or were really good in like tournament play and stuff, I just could not hang with them. And a lot of it was just because I was more patient and more competitive than other backyard players. Yeah. So they would get bored and frustrated, and I wouldn't.
Yeah.
And I would win.
There you go. That's a way to do it. See, just like Data did that other game.
And then I saw the light, and I'm like, this is too much like work. This is not fun. So anyway,
exactly.
And I pretty much never play chess anymore.
So the next one is a game called Dorada. And this one is a weird one because it looks like there's a game out there called Quarto, which is like just a game with little like poker chip looking pieces. I'm not exactly sure how you play it, but I went on Board Game Geek and people were talking about like, hey, this looks just like Quarto. So essentially what it seems like is they took the Quarto game and just stuck the game in the episode and had them fiddle around with the pieces in no real logical way, and called that game Dorada. And it was just something for the two characters to do. So I guess you can buy Quarto and then pretend to play Dorada. So if you really want to do that for your Star Trek themed party, you could go ahead and try it.
Oh, that's funny. I feel like I've seen this in the gaming world too, where they license a game, and so they just reskin another game and call it whatever. I mean, it's a little like these monopolies, right? There's like Monopoly for Star Trek, for example, or Monopoly for Simpsons. It's just Monopoly.
It's just reskinned. Yeah, totally.
And like I remember there was a Clue game too. It was like Scooby-Doo or something. And it didn't say anything about Clue. So it wasn't like Clue by Scooby-Doo. It was just Scooby-Doo.
Yeah.
Only it was totally Clue. Yeah. It was just the same mechanics. The board just looked different.
Right.
Just reskinned. At least that had some logic to it.
It happens all the time, I think.
Yeah. I wonder if that was, we're watching Voyager and kind of slowly, but we're just at this phase in season 4 where Paris and Torres are dating, and I wonder if they just needed them to have something to do.
I bet you that was it. I bet you that was it.
Spending time together.
Yeah. What would a couple do? Oh, they could play a board game. Yeah.
Right.
What game? I don't know. My kid plays this one. How about we put that in there?
Though in retrospect, I don't know, Tom Paris, who was the pilot, hotshot pilot guy, and Torres, who was the engineer, I think a quarter or half Klingon.
Yeah.
Interesting that they would play board games, but I had a lot of time on that ship to pass.
Yeah, exactly.
That was part of it.
Exactly. So the final 2 games on my list are Earth games that were stuck into and played in Star Trek. The first one, Go, the ancient game of Go. Played off and on, I think, in a few different series. I know that they played it in Next Generation, maybe in Deep Space Nine as well. I can't quite remember.
I feel like it feels very next gen.
Yeah.
Because Go is such an elegant, simple, but really, back to that hard work. It's a lot of, because it's pure logic. It's perfect information. Everyone has the same information. It's pure, kind of working out the things. And in Next Gen, I feel like that vision of the world, everyone was happy to work hard for their entertainment. Exactly. Whereas at least in Deep Space Nine, they had holosuites and a bar to go to.
Right.
And not everything wasn't elegant and pretty.
Yeah. The second one was a game that was produced and introduced in 1992 and then featured on Next Generation. And it's a game called Terrace. And it's out there, readily available. It's got average scores on Board Game Geek. And it was a permanent prop, just kind of on the tables in 10 forward. And there it was. And they just played that. So I was
remember what it looked like? Did you see pictures? Was it?
I don't remember what it looked like.
Okay.
No.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah, but it was just, I found it interesting that they would take that game of all the games and just stick it in there. I don't know why that one. So
I know. Yeah, there's a mystery there.
Yeah. So there you go. Those are the board games that were played on Star Trek.
Nice.
There's some
Galen.
other ones that I'll probably be referring to later on in other episodes as I examine board gaming in popular fiction. Moving on, I wanted to just briefly talk about some more world building.
Right.
And this will probably be a really short little segment because it was just a thought that I had. The kind of topic is inspiration from unlikely places. I was talking about Valentine's Day with somebody, and I misspoke and called it Valentimes. I was thinking to myself, the Valentimes, that's a weird word. So I just kept saying it over and over. And then I flipped it around, and it turned into, in my mind, the Veil of Time. Or the Veil of Times.
Sure.
And then the back of my mind said, hey, you've been wondering in the world that you're working on for your D&D campaign, how to put together a world where elves have been around for 10,000 years.
Right.
Humans have been around for maybe 2,000 years. And the different species have been around for different amounts of time. How would that happen? And then I thought of, wow, what if this world or a portion of it was surrounded by this veil of time where things...
veil.
Yeah, things come
Wait, how are you spelling veil?
Veil.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Because there's a geographic veil.
Exactly.
What that is,
yeah. And so I've just sort of started thinking about that and how that might work in my campaign world. And then I took a step back from it and thought, what a weird way to get an idea.
Yeah, that's great.
But it's it must happen for other people this way too, right? It just comes from total left field. And something that you work into your world like that. And I just thought, wow, amazing.
Yeah, well, and I think what you're pointing at is a key process for creativity that takes practice. And people, I think it never occurs to them, and it's subtle. But so what you encountered was you had a question like why there's a gap between 10,000 years and 2,000 years. Why would they do that? And it's the nature of that question. Why? You can say, and I've heard people say this, and it drives me crazy. Even if they don't mean it, you can say, well, why would they even do that? In a way to close the question.
Right.
Like, that's dumb.
Right.
Discount it out of hand. And the other thing to say is, well, ask that question forward. Why would they do that?
Yeah.
And I think that's the. It's the same way when you're reviewing art or watching a movie or something, and and there's a disconnect between a plot point or a character does something that seems a little unusual.
Yeah.
And if the work of art has earned your trust, you ask, why? Why would you do that?
Yep.
And you're now trying to work it. You're like, oh well, because Nick Fury knew Carol Danvers from 1995. Instead of that just. Or if it hasn't earned your trust, you're like, well, that's
right.
You're done. You're done with it. You don't wonder. You're not actually wondering when you ask that question. You're like, that's a disconnect. It hasn't earned my trust. It's a waste of time. Or I'll just not think about it.
Yeah.
So then I think when you're world building, or same with character creation or whatever, you're faced with these opportunities all the time. So when you're building a character, you can, if you're like, we have a character. Actually, all of these characters, I think yours is a great example too. So you're a warforged in a mostly earthly world who's a cleric,
right?
And so you could just say, well, why would a warforged ever be a cleric? I'm not going to do that. I'll make him a gnome instead, or whatever.
Yeah.
But instead, it's an opportunity for creativity.
Yeah.
Well,
open yourself up to those questions. Yeah. Totally. Totally.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was just a thought that I had, and. That, like I said, that inspiration can come from the most unlikely places, and just keep yourself open to whatever it might be. You never know where it's going to come from.
But wait, how far did you get in this idea? So we have this veil of time.
Right now, now I'm stuck between whether it is something that encompasses this world, or if it is a place on this world from which everything comes. Like this wellspring or this fountain.
Just that word veil, is another kind of fun thing to unpack. If you're using that metaphor, I mean, a veil. Part of what a veil does, it conceals, but it also can be removed.
Yes,
it's not a mask, and masks can be removed too. But a veil is like it's porous usually, not always. So there's a lot of ways that could go.
Yeah,
maybe people are passing through the veil. Maybe the veil is moving.
Yeah. Is it one way only? Can it go both ways?
Yeah. Is it a
who
lace
put
veil?
it there?
Yeah.
Was it
Yeah.
natural, or is there intent behind it?
Yeah.
Yeah. It just unpacked all these other questions, which are going to impact the rest of this world that I build out.
What I imagine you'll find is some of those answers will lead to more interesting places too.
Oh yeah.
And you can kind of back into it, or maybe you'll put one thing in place and think like, well, actually, I'm also really, into Doctor Who right now or something. It's like, okay, so which version of the veil makes time travel more possible? Or maybe you don't want time travel. I'm not personally like, I kind of like time travel, but not like some people like time travel. You're like, okay, I don't want time travel. So this veil is going to be a little more firm and a little more, one way perhaps, or not. Or I'm really interested in nomadic culture, so maybe it's cultures moving through, whatever. Ooh, now that's interesting.
Yeah.
Maybe what would time nomads be? So maybe maybe the elves are stuck, but the humans are more nomadic in this setting. Right?
Yeah. See.
Right.
Oh,
yeah, right.
I'm so excited.
Right.
Yeah.
And this is stuff you can like do on the bus or like.
Oh, totally. Yep.
Or walking or whatever. This happens to me all the time when I'm preparing for a game, especially the lead up. I start to get this kind of these inspirations. And it's like, well, what can I fit in to the session without overpacking it?
Right.
Overcomplicating it that when I'm not ready and I need to get the encounters ready.
Yeah. Well, speaking of your campaign, you had, I wasn't there. I had to do something else. Session 2 of the Mohrnheim Halcyon. So let's talk about that.
So and you had let me know in advance that you weren't going to be there. So I had this idea, and I'll throw this back to you here in a minute.
No.
But so we knew that Mend was going to be away, And we had another player who joined for this session, and so we had she was playing a rogue, so we had the rogue join the group, and she was a member of the Thieves Guild as well. So we started the session kind of connecting everybody, giving a little bit of, why are you here, what's happening. Everyone had rested. They had leveled to level 2, because really, and I think we had talked about this, that really level 1 is very much a warm-up. You're barely even playing the game.
Yep.
I wanted to do it to get everyone going, but they had leveled up. I started her level 1, though. One of the things I'm thinking about or exploring is I'm using XP, experience points, for leveling. And I think it's okay if there's some disparity in levels. I think I won't let that get too far, but at least one, maybe 2 levels I'm not worried about as a DM. I think that can add some variety to the play. Anyway, so we made sure everyone was leveled, and so the group connected with the Thieves Guild first. So that was one thing that this rogue, Tahari is her name, she connected with the local Thieves Guild, or a local Thieves Guild. And in Mohrnheim, there are many Thieves Guilds, but they tend to have neighborhoods that they control. So she connected with the Thieves Guild, had a conversation in Thieves' Camp, some limited ideas of, the rules of the road, and they talked a little bit about what it would look like if she were to pick up some jobs. And then the group hired an Amazonian barbarian from the Wayfarers Guild.
Awesome.
So that's an important. The Wayfarers Guild is very powerful, and she led the group then to Tower Inverness, and Tower Inverness was where Tenley, another of the player characters, had been beckoned to. He had been invited by the people there for reasons he was not clear about.
Oh, okay.
And the group agreed to accompany him. There had already been an assassination attempt on Tenley's life, so the group was kind enough. He asked for help. The group agreed to help escort him there. And so there was, last session, if you might remember, there was an assassination attempt against Tenley, and there was a group of cannibals who had tried to kind of capture the group. Mohrnheim is a dangerous place, at least at night when you're new and don't know where you're going.
Yeah.
So the group was sticking together. They went and discovered that there's a group of Fey warlocks. It's a cabal of Fey warlocks in Tower Inverness. And they informed Tenley that he had a resonance with a certain weapon. They offered to train him in his magical abilities, and informed him that he was probably the only one who would be able to get one of these weapons that are in a place currently held by the true worshippers of Loviatar, which is an extremist cult of the goddess Loviatar. And Loviatar is already an evil goddess, but mostly a controlled, kind of above-board one. And these are a particularly small extremist group that the Tower Inverness folks are really worried about, and don't want them to get control of these weapons. They did not know about that assassination attempt, so they also informed Tenley who they suspected might have done it, which was actually a Raven Queen cult that isn't operating, that they are currently kind of in active hostilities against. The Tower Inverness is. So meanwhile, a Nightingale reached out to the Aarakocra, or Aureus, I believe is his name. And so this Nightingale kind of flew to him, and Aarakocra are bird creatures, and there are not many of those here. This telepathic Nightingale didn't seem to really have much of an agenda other than wanting food. I mean, it asked for worms and bugs. Okay. And then essentially flew away when they had no worms or bugs to give it. The group kind of regathered, and so Lilith is another rogue in the group, and she wandered a little bit in the tower owned by the Warlocks in Tower Inverness, and was looking for some trouble to get into, and almost found some. So she met with another visitor, another guest of the tower. Only she was able to talk her way out of it and met a new friend, so Prince Nilo, who's a visitor from far away. And so they charmed each other, and she did not steal from him.
Oh, wow.
Though she, I believe, was tempted.
Yeah.
So the group then returned to the inn, which is a neighborhood away, or a couple neighborhoods away. Were offered a job to steal some jewelry from Eshragel the Medusa. So the Thieves Guild would like them to do that, and will pay for that. They did not decide yet if they would take that job or not.
Yeah.
And it was right about here that there was another assassination attempt.
What?
The Blades, yes. They sent 4 this time, so they doubled. They sent 2 the first time and 4. The group right there in the end. So they swung in through the windows and attacked them, and the group defended themselves just fine, though there was a little bit of risk there. Pretty hastily left, both because they were really not welcome in the inn anymore. Having, the Aarakocra is a storm sorcerer, so he had cast some thunder-based spells.
Oh my!
And so both from the ruckus and just because they didn't feel safe, they decided it was better to leave. So they went and ended the day at back at Tower Inverness with the intent that probably the next day they would go and get the weapons as requested in a dungeon.
Wow!
And that was the plot points.
Of
the session.
Yeah.
And so I had from a few reflections perspective, one thing that I always am thinking about, and more now than ever, is the pacing of it.
Right.
And there were some things that I've been doing more of that I want to keep doing. So that Nightingale, for example, was a way that I cut to balance the screen time. So we had half the group. The party had split. It wasn't a bad thing. It was okay.
Yeah.
But the party had split. One was Tenley getting trained and talking to the warlocks, and Arias and Lilith were kind of in a nearby bar or something. And so I cut away in order to kind of juice things up. And frankly, the assassins were another attempt on my part to move things along. So we had not had any combats that session. We had probably about an hour left, maybe a little bit more. And the group doesn't necessarily want a lot of combat, but frankly, I just play D&D because I want a little bit of combat in every session. So that's my rule of thumb.
Yeah.
I was thinking about this, and a lot of games will use wandering monsters in a dungeon if the group is dilly-dallying too much.
Right.
So if you're searching a room too much, you roll and see if wandering monsters come. And I think I'll probably do that. But in this case, it was a real-time thing. The group was just talking a lot. And I was like, all right, that's enough being careful. That's enough. The trouble's going to come to you if the trouble's going to come to your characters if the players are too careful. Which is ironic, I know, but there it is. And so the irony is the environment is more dangerous to the characters when the players are over careful. So, actually I was wondering, Galen, having finished your Curse of Strahd campaign. What's your approach to pacing? I remember you handling it well, but I'm curious about what was your thoughts or your kind of process around that?
It was pretty much just taking the temperature of the table and seeing if the players were engaged. If the majority of everybody were checked in and invested in what was going on, I was cool with what they were doing. But then as when discussions would happen and they'd talk about what to do in this and that, and when I noticed people start to check out and that percentage of players dwindled, I would introduce something. I would move them along. I would say, oh, here comes the horrible mouth that's going to swallow you all if you don't move down this corridor. Give them a little goose. So basically, it's just if the players are paying attention and engaged in what was going on.
Yeah, and I've been trying to do that more lately. That's another one of the things I've been working on. And what I found is, though, I have to know. This is something I have to prepare in advance. What is it that's going to come? And some dungeons have wandering monsters, and that's a really great lever I think that you could pull.
I've been wondering too about that sort of thing. Is thinking about transparency with that. So I don't know, maybe if the players are taking a long time, maybe something happens in the game world, because the world is living, right? It's moving along, even though the characters are stationary. And if the players take too long, something bad could happen outside that they won't know about until they need it and it's gone, or something like that. So
that's a really good point. Is to keep the world clock going, keep the in-game clock going as the out-of-game clock is rolling. And I think that's another thing I don't do as much as I would like. Want to do that more.
I'm the same. Yeah, same here.
And I think so far we've done really well about our combats too. I think it's a similar idea. Like combats aren't real time. That just doesn't really work in D&D, but it can be closer to real time. And so, when the players are taking too much time to plot out every detail, remember that these are supposed to be 6-second rounds, 6-second turns, right? And so over plotting, there can be a disconnect there.
Yeah,
so
definitely.
it helps move things along. Looking forward to my next session, I have at least one more kind of faction that I want to introduce, and I'm not going to kind of spoil what that is to you because you're in this game.
Yes.
I think, from a DM perspective, I've already kind of mentioned like 3 or 4 factions. I think one more will be a good place to then give you guys some space to react to them. I think that's enough. We've got the Blades, who are the assassination guild. We've got, the Raven Queen people who are probably hiring the Blades. We've got this Loviatar cult that you've never even met yet that you're about to go murder. And then the Thieves Guild, and there's that Medusa. And, I think I'm getting to a point in the campaign where it's probably I've got the ingredients in the pot now.
Yeah.
That need to be there.
Yeah. It's interesting as a player to think about all those groups, and none of them, off the top of my head, would be considered good guys.
I know. I need to.
And I kind of like that. As like,
yeah,
we can settle there, or we can look. You know what I mean? Look for other things.
I mean, so far the Tower Inverness warlocks, they're Fey warlocks for one thing, and so they're a little. They have their own agenda for sure.
Yeah.
So far they have only been straight up with your party. And that's another thing that I'm trying to be careful of navigating with the group too. I think there's different players who have a different sense of fun.
Sure.
For dancing with the bad guys a little bit. The other thing I'm being very conscious of is I don't want Mohrnheim to be so dangerous no one would ever want to live there.
Right.
That it makes no sense to stay.
Yeah.
And so, at the same time, it's an adventure game. We're adventuring in a city, so there needs to be danger, but there's that common sense, like, why would you stay?
Yeah. Right.
And so one of the things I had done over between sessions was I created the calendar. Which I'd never done for a game before.
Yeah.
And I sent it out to everybody, knowing full well that I am probably the only one who will really reference it. But it gives me a sense that then I can introduce this feeling of time. And, for example, it's almost the equinox. And so I think I'm going to introduce some sort of, the city will notice that, right? That's a very normal thing for a city to be thinking about. It's spring, right? And so... in Seattle right now, we're like dying for spring. Like it just snowed again in March, which is very unusual.
Yeah.
And we're just like, oh my God, is spring ever going to come? And I think I kind of want to bring a little of that feel to the game.
Yeah.
And then the other thing I'm wrestling with this campaign is the weather. I thought of Mohrnheim as a snowy city.
Okay.
But thinking about actual cities in the world. The summer comes.
Sure. Yeah.
Normally, and so I'm debating about, is it like more fantastic? Maybe like in Game of Thrones, when they talk about winter, that's not a year. That's like cycles of years.
Yeah.
When winter comes, it's, it comes in, and I only know it from the show, so the books may explain this differently. But in the show, my sense is that there may be seasons, but it's also it's both where the weather gets colder, and that's when the undead come from the north. Those are kind of synced up, is my understanding of it.
Yeah.
And so that's another approach I could take also.
Yeah.
Or I could just pattern it after, Anchorage, for example, which is about the same latitude, I think, as Mohrnheim probably is.
Yeah.
More or less.
Yeah.
We haven't quite decided on that. So
it's interesting when you introduced the calendar. It got me to thinking about our own, like my personal calendar year, and what those like holidays or times of year that I, Galen, like. What do I look forward to? Like Christmas and New Year's, like the big ones, or like my friend's birthday always comes in this month. And kind of thinking of like, oh, that means that this world has that too.
Yes.
Those times of year, those festivals, those holidays, those anniversaries that are specific to characters and different relationships.
Right.
And that really kind of got me jazzed to try and find out what those are together, right? As a group and with you as a DM, what those holidays are and all that kind of stuff. So
Nice.
I got really excited about that.
Nice. Good.
Yeah.
Good. I'm keeping notes, so I'm keeping track of the date and everything.
Awesome.
Yeah. And, one thing I noticed when I made the calendar, I went ahead and made it pretty symmetrical. So so I think there's just like all the months have the same number of days, and it's very closely based on our solar calendar.
Yeah.
That in our real world we use. Because really what I realized is just getting this thing done at all is going to be plenty of work. I don't need to make it too realistic.
Exactly.
Like that's going to be for relatively little gain. So, but that's a really good observation you made too about like our personal relationships, like as an individual. I think we all experience the year very differently.
Yeah.
To your point, like between first there's just the birthdays and anniversaries, and I moved to Seattle, in July of 1994. I'll always remember July as that time.
Right.
Then there's the kind of civic holidays, or like there's Christmas as a time of the lights and the buying things and all that, and then there's my religious life, which has a relationship with Christmas, and we just had Ash Wednesday, kind of driving up, which some people are very engaged with, and some people are not at all,
right.
And there's baseball season, which is now, and I'm more of a football guy, so training camp is kind of a is a warm up, and it's almost draft season for the football. We're warming up to that. So. Yeah, it's a really great. So, what would our player characters be up to?
Exactly.
Like when did your character wake up? That's the thing.
Yeah.
Like,
what season was it?
Yeah.
What was the weather like? That kind of stuff. Totally. Yeah.
Because how long has he been unearthed?
Not
like months.
Yeah, not long. I'm thinking definitely under a year.
Okay, that was my impression too.
Yeah, enough time to pretty much walk from wherever it was he woke up to where he met the other players, the other characters.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, to the port of call of wherever that ship was. Just to catch everyone up, is I had essentially kind of informed Galen that his character had been kind of pinged by the temple of Ilmater, who he worships. But other than that, we haven't talked about it. He'd been invited, and I kind of left it up to you if you wanted, or I could fill it in. So
I'm totally going to fill it in.
Nice. Okay.
So yeah, I have this whole idea. I'm writing this thing. It's like a short story, right?
Oh wow. Cool.
That I'm going to finish up pretty soon here, and then I'm going to send it out probably to you first to see if there's anything egregious in it that you don't want, and then I'll send it out to the rest of the players. To sort of let them know what happened. I won't read it here. I'll save that for when I send it out to everybody. I'll just give you the kind of highlights that I was thinking. So Mend got that invitation from the Temple of Ilmater. There was no question that he'd go. That's the one thing in this world that is at all comforting or familiar. And he has an innate sense of duty. And so he definitely set out immediately for the temple. I had an idea that he would have to ask directions from people.
Right.
People who are probably, if not outright afraid of him, definitely looking at him askance, right?
Yeah. For sure.
Because he's nothing like anything that they've ever seen before.
Yeah, that's great. Because if we were role-playing that, something would happen.
Yeah.
Like maybe not a battle or something. Maybe, I don't know.
And so had this idea that he'd eventually get enough directions where he'd be able to find sort of the way, but not enough that it'd be like that direction, but he still wouldn't know specifically where. Yeah. So he'd have to...
That's great.
He'd have to use...
Because in the real world, have you ever had someone like ask you directions for a place that's like 2-3 neighborhoods away?
Yes.
And it's like someone who's out of town, and you're like, I mean, it's that way, but but like start late. That just happened to me just like a month ago.
Yeah,
and I was like, oh my god, that is 2 miles away. And I named off a bunch of streets, and he seemed happy with it. But I was like, oh man, good luck.
Yeah, and I personally am someone, I do landmarks, so I am bad about giving directions to someone from out of town. It's like, so you go down there next to the dead tree, and then you hang a left, and then turn left at the guy with all the dogs. that kind of thing. So
yeah.
So then I had this idea that Mend would have to use one of the spells that he has in game, guidance, to ask Ilmater for like guidance. Where am I going?
Nice.
And so to get that sort of ping, that compass ping, he would get there. I imagine he would get there like during prayers, because Ilmater has a litany of like 6 times during the day that you have to say your prayers. And so he'd arrive during one of those and take part in it, and eventually seek out one of the priests there, who would probably also not be real welcoming to him, but realize that he is a servant of Ilmater and something, a tool, basically, right? A tool that they can use to fulfill their duties and obligations.
Now, is that because he's Warforged? And there's like some bigotry? Okay.
That's what I'm thinking.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
So long story short, I have the idea that Mend is in the conversation of things that he could do. He mentions the fact that in his old capacity, he had tended the virulently ill because he is immune to disease. And so men would then be taken to the part of the temple where the no one else wants to go because of the chance of catching diseases and dying. And then in there, I think he would find some measure of peace where he can help people both physically attend to their diseases, their wounds, what have you, and also tend to them spiritually as well. To, I imagine, the people that would inevitably end up dying from their diseases, but find comfort and a sense of peace surrounded by living beings whom he can help.
Cool.
And that's sort of where I'm at right now. How he leaves and extricates himself from that situation and goes back to the party, I'm still kind of tinkering with, but it's coming. It's coming.
I would think about, for one thing, if you want men to have like an alcove or like a cot or something, or I guess he doesn't really need to sleep, but he does need to kind of sit for 4 hours a day or something.
Yeah.
Like, anyway, he could have a small place to kind of stay, especially because he's serving there. So that's something just you can kind of think about if you and you don't need to use it or not.
Yeah.
Like, it's open to you.
Yeah.
Especially because you're serving. And, what was it? Oh, and so the group, and it even worked out to a day. So the group was traveling, back to between the inn where they had stayed, where you left them, where they fought the assassins. And then they traveled back near the end of the day to Tower Inverness.
Yeah.
So you could see them on their way. Maybe they were walking right by.
Oh, great.
The temple, and you were like, "Oh, where are you going?" And that's one possible thing. Yeah, and maybe that's the easiest, or maybe you have to ask around, or you get to the inn just as they're leaving. Like you could, if you returned at near, as the late afternoon was coming.
Yeah.
Any of those are easy. So if you are listening to this on podcast, we really appreciate it if you go into iTunes and give us a 5-star review. That helps people find us, and we greatly appreciate it. If you're watching this on the Continuing Clockwise YouTube channel and you enjoyed it, please click the like button and subscribe.
So if you're watching this on Twitch, either live, or as a video on demand, and you like what you see, you can go ahead and hit that follow button up top. You can get notifications of when I go live on the stream. There's also subscriptions available. If you like that and want to support the channel, want to see more of this kind of stuff, keep the channel alive, you can also do that as well. You can also catch me on social media. You can find me at @Zobmie, Zobmie on the Twitter. And Chad, you're on the Twitter as well, yes?
I am at Contclockwise, CONTCLOCKWISE. So at Continuing Clockwise, at Contclockwise. And then so all these things are in all the notes if you want to reach us that way.
Yeah.
And and one last thing that I don't know that we've said. So we release these on podcast every first and third late night on Thursdays, and then they're released on YouTube usually second and fourth Thursdays.
Alrighty, folks, that's going to do it for us. We hope to see you again next time. Until then, take care of yourselves, and we'll catch you later.
Game great.
We're done.